Do you all remember earlier this year when Attorney General Pam Bondi decided to convene a task force in the Department of Justice to study anti-Christian bias in the federal government? This was something Donald Trump really wanted to do. He said he was going to put together a group of people whose job it was to eliminate anti-Christian bias in the federal government, which is a weird thing to do because, like, where are people biased against Christians in the government, much less a completely Republican government? Are they mad because only 98% of elected Republicans are Christian? Like, what the hell are they talking about? And if they want to claim Christians are the victims of bias, who do you think has it better than Christians? It's not atheists. It's not Muslims. Like, who do you think is doing better than Christians right now? No idea. So, anyway, this task force to eradicate anti Christian bias, they had their first meeting back in April. And right away, when you look at the guest list, it's not hard to figure out where they're going with this because the guest list included Pastor Paula White Cain, who is one of Trump's personal pastors because she has the look. It had homeschooling advocate Michael Ferris, who founded a fundamentalist Christian college and one of those groups that advocates for homeschooling and no regulation whatsoever. They had the guy who's running Liberty University, like the guy who came after Jerry Falwell Jr. So when you invite those people to your group meeting, it's not hard to figure out what conclusions they want to reach, right? And I personally thought, what sort of grievances are they going to have? Are they going to get mad that people said, like, happy holidays in the government instead of Merry Christmas? Because there are no real examples of anti-Christian bias. So what the hell are they going to complain about? Well, this week, guess what happened? They finally released their report. Here it is. The initial report by the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. And look at the date on here because it says it's dated June 6th, 2025. But I'm not kidding. It just got released this week, like 3 months later. And it's 49 pages. And honestly, it's not even put together well. You can tell, and I am speculating here, but I think Pam Bondi went to all the cabinet departments and said, you guys, I need you to submit a 1 to 2 page report of all the ways your department under Joe Biden discriminated against Christians. And I need you to send me your pages and I'm going to put them together in this report. And the thing is, this is very much a like ninth grader writing an essay on Microsoft Word, sort of, this is what they're putting together. And you just see like examples of anti-Christian bias. I just want to scroll to a random page here. Like, oh, Department of Defense, what happened? Here's their top line list, bullet point 1, bullet point 2, and then here's what we're doing about it. And you scroll down some more. Department of Education, bullet point 1 and 2, here's what we're doing about it. Like, there's no cohesion to this whole packet of information. But I did want to talk about some of the examples they listed in here because it's freaking hilarious what they consider anti-Christian bias. And I'll give you some examples of this. So here is one. Let's jump to this page right here. This is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is the one where Donald Trump finds his one black friend and he's like, where can I put you in the cabinet? Housing. And he did it in his first term and he's done it multiple times now. Anyway, what's their example of anti-Christian bias? Look at number 2 here. Targeted removal of holiday posts. During the 2023 Easter season, a public affairs officer was instructed to take down posts on an official HUD Office X account related to Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter because they potentially violated the Establishment Clause and other federal regulations. However, similar posts in celebration of Pride Month, Ramadan, and Diwali, among others, received no scrutiny. I mean, first of all, if this is the worst thing that's happened in housing and urban development, is they made someone take down some posts on Twitter, that is not discrimination. But okay, now I was curious. Like, what the hell happened with these posts? Because I have no idea. So here's an example of one they decided to keep. This is under the Biden administration. This is a post made by HUD. You could see it's HUDGOV. This is, I assume, on Instagram, but it says Happy Pride from HUD, and it's a rainbow background. And it says at the bottom, Pride Month is a time to honor and celebrate the many strides our nation has made to advance the rights of the LGBTQIA plus community across ... I mean, fine, I guess. I don't know. Does this make you happy to see? It's fine. I'm glad they did it. Okay, so they kept that one up. And they should. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, right? So then I would love to show you what they posted on Palm Sunday or Good Friday or Easter Sunday. But guess what? They took those posts down, and the report that Pam Bondi has just released did not include screenshots of what they took down. So here's my theory. The posts on Good Friday and Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter, I wonder if they included Bible verses or comments about Jesus rising that endorsed a religious belief, as opposed to just saying, hey, everyone, happy Easter for those who celebrate. Like, if they did that, I don't think that would be a problem. But I'm guessing someone in the Biden administration was like, here's a Bible verse to go along with why we are celebrating Good Friday. And if they did that, I get why that person might have been asked to take it down. I wish I could show you what they did, but I can't because it's not there. But while I was digging up stuff for this story, you know what I did find that was not mentioned in this report that just came out? This is something that came up during the Biden administration from HUD. This is on Facebook, Department of Housing and Urban Development. There's no place like home for the holidays. Merry Christmas from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And there's a whole post that says Merry Christmas from HUD from 2021. And again, I'm just saying, if there was anti-Christian bias going on in that department, you would think you would not see a post that honors a very specifically Christian holiday. But this was not mentioned anywhere in the report. They just said the Easter one was taken down and that's anti-Christian. You can't do that to us, without telling anybody what that post said. So this is an example of the worst kinds of discrimination against Christians in the government, according to that specific department. Okay, what about the Department of Education? I have talked about this before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but the report from the Department of Education listed two things on there that I found really surprising. Let me see if I could pull up one of them. Yeah, check out this right here. I'll share this with you. I'm going to jump to there's 2 bullet points under the Department of Education. I'm going to jump to number 2. Targeting of school boards. The Biden administration's book ban coordinator role within the Education Department investigated school boards for removing age-inappropriate materials from school libraries, typically in response to religious objections by parents. Now, they don't give us examples of any of this. There are no details about this, but basically what happened is during the Biden administration, when all these right-wing school boards are trying to ban books from school libraries, the Biden administration decided, hey, we should appoint someone to kind of just oversee all this, because if someone goes too far, maybe we, the federal government, can do something about it. And by the way, the books that people want to keep in school libraries are not age inappropriate. Usually the ones all these right-wing parents are trying to get rid of are like, here's a book, a young adult novel about a student who's learning about sex for the first time. Or maybe this person is LGBTQ, and those are the books they want to get off the shelves because they think the existence of those people is inappropriate. So anyway, what did these book ban coordinators do? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The existence of the book ban coordinator, they say, is anti-Christian discrimination because they got nothing. Let me jump to that other bullet point, though, because I've talked about this before. Weaponization of policies targeting Christian higher education. The Biden administration weaponized the Department of Education and attempted to impose record-breaking fines on some of the nation's largest Christian universities, including Liberty and Grand Canyon University. Again, I've made a video about this before. I'm not going to talk about it again. But in the case of Liberty University, which was hit with a $14 million fine, why did the Biden Education Department go after Liberty? Because Liberty violated something called the Clery Act. What's the Clery Act? It's basically the rule that says, hey, if your school takes money from the government, including student loan payments, which Liberty relies on, then you have an obligation to keep students safe on campus. And that means students need a way to safely report sexual violence. And the school needs to let kids know if there's a threat on campus. That's the bare minimum, and Liberty wasn't doing that. Someone who spoke to the Washington Post about this said it was the single most blistering Clery report I have ever read, ever. Because the second largest Clery Act violation fine went to Michigan State under that guy, Larry Nassar. You can Wikipedia him if you don't know about him. And that fine was $4.5 million. Liberty was putting students in so much danger that they were fined $14 million. And guess what the Trump administration did? They said, we're erasing that. I'm sorry, I take that back. They were fined $14 million. I think it already happened, so the Trump administration could not take that back. But again, is that weaponizing the government against a Christian university? No. They punished a university that was breaking the rules, and this one happened to be Christian. What about the other one, Grand Canyon State University? The Biden Department of Education fined them $37.7 million. Why? Because they said Grand Canyon University lied to students about the cost of tuition if you were taking certain PhD programs. So basically, they said it was going to cost you this much. They lured you in if you were taking that program. And then they said, actually, if you want to get your PhD, it's going to cost that much. And now you're in it. You can't just transfer. You're already in the program, so you got to pay this extra money. And it was so egregious that the school lied about tuition costs on its website, its contract, the net price calculator that students could use online to figure out how much they have to pay, and marketing material. That's why the Biden administration punished that school. And guess what the Trump administration did? And I can say this definitely this time. The Trump administration said, we're just going to hit Control Z on that whole punishment. So Grand Canyon University, you're fine. You don't have to pay anything. We're going to wipe that $37.7 million fine away. Go ahead and keep lying to students. So I want to go back to what the report said. This report from Pam Bondi said, this one's from Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady. What does the Department of Education say? Findings of anti-Christian bias? Well, you punish 2 Christian universities that deserve to be punished. And also, you hired somebody to oversee the book bans, which is a good thing, like overseeing the book bans. That's their example of anti-Christian bias. So it's not. Those are Christian schools that got punished for hurting their own students. Here's another one. This one was just fascinating to me. Okay, the Department of Defense had their special thing that they were mad about too. Let's look at this one. Here we go. Here's the page from the Department of Defense. Look at bullet point number 2. Cancellation of pastoral care for service members and veterans. During Holy Week in 2023 at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, they issued a cease and desist letter to a community of Franciscan Catholic priests that had been providing pastoral care to service members and veterans for nearly 2 decades. After canceling its contract with these priests, the center awarded the contract to a secular for-profit entity, leaving inadequate pastoral care for Catholics during Holy Week. Okay, so basically there were like Catholic chaplains helping these patients at Walter Reed, which is like the military hospital. And what? The hospital decided to get rid of them and hire subpar chaplains for the veterans? I mean, that sounds pretty bad. Guess what actually happened in that case? Because it wasn't that. Basically, what happened is that the religious group that was providing these chaplain services, Their contract with Walter Reed expired in 2023 on March 31st, which coincidentally happened to be like right before the week of Easter. That's what happened. Their contract just expired. But the priests, the chaplains, were like, well, it's a big important time in the Catholic calendar, so maybe we should stick around Walter Reed to help these patients, which is a nice thought. And the hospital said, sorry, you can't be here because we have no working relationship with you right now because you don't have a contract. So you can't be on the premises. And that's why they issued the cease and desist. Like, you need to get out of here. We already issued a contract with this other group that also provides chaplain services. Nothing nefarious is happening here. And the Catholic group that got kicked out there, they're saying, I'm sorry, who are these other chaplains you just hired? They are not from our organization, so they are not good enough. Even though they didn't explain why these other chaplains were subpar. They just said, sorry, those people don't count. And this became a whole right-wing media firestorm. And then guess what happened after that? After all this backlash, after all these people are like, how dare you kick out these other priests? Even the Archbishop got involved here. This is a story from the Catholic News Agency. It is incomprehensible that essential pastoral care is taken away from the sick and the aged when it was so readily available, said this Archbishop in a statement a week after that chaplain group was basically kicked out. This is a classic case where the adage, if it is not broken, do not fix it, applies. But it was broken because they didn't have a contract. It had expired. Well, guess what happened after all of this? Well, let's cut to like 2 months later. Now it's May. The Defense Health Agency reopened bidding on the contract in May. It awarded the new contract to the original chaplains group, the Franciscans, on June 8th. So 2 months, not even. Yeah, like 2 months after that whole thing happened, they reopened the bidding. The chaplain group won the bid. They got the contract to provide chaplain services to patients, and everything was fine again. So you tell me, the story I just told you, is that anti-Christian bias, or is it, sorry, these people didn't have a contract for a little while, and eventually the hospital said, okay, now you do have a contract, so you can come back. This is what Pam Bondi and the Trump administration is claiming. These are the worst things that have ever happened to Christians. Okay, here's the worst one when it comes to the Department of Health and Human Services, because they say the Biden administration persecuted a Catholic hospital. And I'm just going to tell you the story because the thing they wrote is really long. But basically, the report cited what happened to the St. Francis Health System in Oklahoma. That hospital, because it's a Catholic hospital, it has a chapel inside the hospital. Okay. Inside that chapel is a lit candle because people might go there to pray. And if you're in a Catholic church or something, you might want your candles. It's what they do. So in 2023, the Department of Health and Human Services has an inspection from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They just want to make sure the hospital's like doing what it's supposed to do because they do get reimbursed for these services. And the inspector went to the chapel and he sees this candle in the hospital. And the reporter, the regulator, basically says, you guys, according to the rules of like the government, you're not allowed to have a lit candle with an open flame burning unattended 24/7. Which, think about that. That makes sense. Right? You don't want an open candle that's just lying about in a hospital and no one's around to watch it to make sure nothing bad happens. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And the regulator also said you're not allowed to have an open flame within 15 feet, 15 feet of oxygen delivery equipment, which kind of makes sense. You don't want to cause an explosion in the hospital. And it's not that they had like an oxygen tank lying around there, but let's say you're a patient at the hospital and you want to visit the chapel where there's an open flame and you have like respirators or something like that. It could be bad. So basically, the regulator said, you need to fix this. I don't care how you do it, but you got to fix this. And right-wing groups went ape shit over this. One hospital executive said, we are being asked to choose between serving those in need and worshiping God in the chapel, but they go hand in hand. Our work depends upon our faith in the living God, and the sanctuary candle represents this to us. By the way, let me show you a picture of this candle that they have, because this is from the lawsuit they filed against the government. Like, there's the chapel, and there's the candle just lying there, waiting for someone to come by and make the whole hospital explode or something. So this is what they were complaining about. And guess what? So the chapel, the hospital system, and all these right-wing groups, they sued the government, and both sides settled it out of court. And I don't know what the nature of the settlement was, but I will tell you, the candle is still there in the hospital. So, is it anti-Christian bias? No, it's the government saying maybe you should not have a fire hazard lying around in a hospital. That's it. I don't know. There was a quick one I will just mention from the Department of Justice. They mentioned that there's the city of Troy, Idaho, that said a church cannot build in a part of our community. But I've covered that story too. And the reason the city told a church, which happens to be the church of Douglas Wilson, who is basically a cultish leader from Idaho, they wanted to expand from Moscow, Idaho. So they wanted to build a church in Troy, Idaho. And the city of Troy said, you can't build a church here. Is it because it's Doug Wilson? No. The city said, we have 2 blocks in our small town where we want to make it a commercial district where people can come here, park here, spend money here, and then get the hell out, right? Because that's good for building our economy. And so we blocked off 2 blocks where you can't build stuff that doesn't make money. And the church counts. You can't build a church right here. If you want to build it over, like a block over, that's fine. And they got sued over this, and that lawsuit's still working through the courts. And I honestly, as I said in the video when I made it, I don't know how the lawsuit will end up, because maybe the town didn't cross its T's and dot its I's. But this is cited as an example of anti-Christian bias. When again, the city has an argument that has nothing to do with religious discrimination. And I want to point out one last thing. The FBI chimed in. Kash Patel chimed in. And he said there was a Biden-era memo that asserted that radical traditionalist Catholics are domestic terrorist threats. And they suggested infiltrating Catholic churches as threat mitigation. And I have also covered that story on this channel. The long version of the short version of that long story is that there were a couple of FBI agents who said, there's a guy we are watching because we have reason to believe he is a threat to our nation. And he had said some things. And then they said he basically joined a local church. It calls itself Catholic. It wasn't actually a Catholic church, but this guy joined it. And then they said he started recruiting members from that church for a potential attack. That's why they are following this guy. And they wrote this up in a report. And they said there might be a link between this guy and his extremist church that he goes to. But they pointed out that this guy has been an extremist long before he joined this particular church. Guess what? Those FBI analysts also found that in other parts of the FBI, they were also looking at a couple of people who belonged to the same type of church. And so when they're writing their report, they're pointing out, hey, maybe there is something here we should be looking at. Maybe this particular type of church is breeding some of these extremists because they're all finding each other there. And maybe that's something we should keep an eye on. Now, that report was like rough draft form. It's not meant for public inspection. And when they actually submitted it to their higher ups, the FBI basically said, this report is bad. You're not allowed to do certain things you wrote in here. Some of the things here won't fly. But they never got to that editing stage because the rough draft of that report got leaked to the right-wing media. And the right-wing media took it and said the FBI is targeting Catholic churches. Like, no, they were not targeting Catholic churches. They were targeting some extremists who went to a particular kind of church that wasn't even really Catholic. So again, that is not anti-Christian bias. That was our government's law enforcement doing their job and trying to document a potentially dangerous phenomenon. So again, this is what they did. All their big examples of anti-Christian bias in the report are not systemic attacks on Christianity. They're just examples of like Christians behaving badly and then getting punished for it. Because according to the Trump administration, Christians should be allowed to get away with anything they want, and who cares if it violates the law? And yet, the report says at the very end of this Pam Bondi report, look at what it says here. And I do want to show you this. Where is it? I want to make sure I'm reading you the right part here. Here we go. This is on page 49 of 49. Conclusion. Though these investigations remain in their early stages, the evidence uncovered is unmistakable. During the Biden administration, people of faith, particularly Christians, were repeatedly subjected to anti-religious bias at the hands of their own government. No, they weren't. I promise you, the Catholic Joe Biden was not sitting around saying, how can I punish Christians? It's just not a thing that happens. What this reminded me of, I don't know if any of you had to sit through God's Not Dead 1, the one with Kevin Sorbo. But if you watched God's Not Dead, that movie, which is obviously, and they're not hiding it, it's a work of fiction, but they're saying it's based on a thing that really happens or whatever. Like the philosophy professor who's fighting with the strong Christian student. At the end of that movie, in the credits, they basically say there are a bunch of Supreme Court cases and other legal cases that are actual examples of Christian discrimination. But if you actually look at any of those cases, it's exactly the same story where it's like, no, those are not examples of Christians being discriminated against. Those are examples of Christians doing something illegal and people fighting that out in court. Like, it's the same thing. These people have no examples of bias against Christians. They have no examples of discrimination. So they make up stupid shit because they know Christians are not reading the report. I did because I'm a loser. But they know that their people are never going to read the report. They're never going to dig into any of these stories. So they can just say whatever they want. And guess what? To some extent, that plan worked, because this is the headline I saw on Fox. DOJ task force finds numerous instances of anti-Christian government bias under Biden. Yeah, no, they didn't. They said there were numerous instances, but none of those actually check out. But they fed the report to Fox. They got the headline they wanted. They know none of the people who see the headline are ever going to dig into any of these stories. And so when it comes to what are they going to do with this task force now, I'll tell you what I think the answer is. I think the task force goes away, never has another meeting because there's nothing for them to do, because the only reason the task force existed was for this headline to appear. And now that it has, and the report is out, they've done what they wanted to do. Because it's not about eradicating anti-Christian bias, because it doesn't exist. It's about trying to lie to people and tell them Christian bias against Christians exist. And they'll use this flimsy thing because they know their people don't do research. And that's it. Like, it's just flat out lies. Like, this whole charade shows you the Biden administration wasn't actually waging war on Christianity, but we are now living in a regime full of conservative Christians who just want to weaponize victimhood to shield themselves from accountability, right? All of these stories, they all dissolve under scrutiny, when really all that was going on is Christians were being held to the same standards as everybody else, which is the one thing conservative Christians hate. They do not want to be treated the same as everybody else. That is not persecution in any sort of way. That is evidence of Christian entitlement. These people, these Republicans, they don't give a damn about freedom of religion. They want freedom from consequences. And they think they should be able to operate above the law at any times. Listen, if there is or was actual bias against Christians, guess what? I'm against that. I want to see that end. I don't think bias should be around for any of these groups. And if it happens in the government agencies, good, put a stop to it, no matter who's getting victimized here. The problem is there is this underlying theory that Christians suffer more discrimination than other religious groups, and that's why it must be eradicated, that bias, but none of that is true. So if these are the best examples the government has of anti-Christian bias, they have nothing. Nothing. All right, I'm done with this stupid story. What other questions you got here? Wait, they're complaining that they weren't allowed to ban enough books? Yup, and they're really mad that someone from the Department of Education was watching over them as all these school boards tried to do that. Starting to think epistemology education is the way out. I mean, anytime anyone says more education is the way out, I feel like no. I feel like most people are getting a fine education, but they just don't care, or they graduate from grade school or high school and they throw it all away because they're listening to professional victims complain about stuff. So I wish you were right. This is ridiculous. People are confronting death every day in the hospital, and these people are worried about a candle. Not only worried about a candle, they're like, can we put a candle in a hospital where it's a potential safety hazard? And they're fighting in the court to make sure they can do that because their religious freedom says we got to put hospital patients in danger, maybe. Christians are overrepresented in our government. What are they talking about? I don't know, man. You're right. They are overrepresented in the government. Again, I'm not making this up. The actual numbers I have here, Christians make up 98% of elected Republicans in Congress. They make up 87% of Congress overall. So, yeah, I mean, again, if Christians think they're being discriminated against, I am happy as an atheist. I will speak on behalf of all atheists. I will trade places with you because you really have it rough. Do you want to trade places with us? This is a nationwide list going back how far, and this is all they got. I mean, this report on anti-Christian bias was supposed to cover things that happened during the Biden administration, and yes, this is the best they could come up with.